time review. As promised, in today's video, we are going to be focusing on how we attempt to avoid anxiety-provoking situations by taking a look at Sigmund Freud's defense mechanisms. Part 1, we are going to identify and define some of Freud's defense mechanisms. And Part 2, we are going to test out what we've learned with a few practice questions. As always, if you would like to follow along, there is a link in the description box that will bring you to a worksheet that goes with the video. And with that being said, let's get started. Now, if you watched my video on the id, ego, and superego, then you should know that according to Freud, our personality is going to develop as a result of our unconscious mind and childhood experiences. To be a functioning member of society, we cannot go around acting out all of our instinctual urges and impulses. We need to control them. According to Freud, when the ego thinks that it can no longer contain the opposing forces that are the id and superego, we begin to experience a flood of anxiety. Freud is even going to state that anxiety is the price we pay for civilization. When anxiety overwhelms the body, Freud said that in an attempt to protect itself, the ego will utilize a defense mechanism. In the psychoanalytical theory, a defense mechanism is going to be the ego's protective methods of reducing anxiety by unconsciously distorting reality. There are going to be 8 defense mechanisms that you need to know about for the AP Psych test, and we are going to take a look at each one. I will also include an example for each defense mechanism, just to make sure that we really understand them. The first defense mechanism, and the one Freud says underlies all other defense mechanisms, is going to be repression. Repression is going to occur when any anxiety-provoking thought, feeling, or behavior that is too extreme for the ego to handle is removed from conscious thought. While we are not consciously aware of these feelings or urges, Freud did say they can seep out in our dreams as well as through Freudian slips. Our next defense mechanism is going to be regression. Regression is going to be when we attempt to cope with anxiety by acting out in a way that is associated with an earlier stage of life, instead of handling unacceptable impulses in a more appropriate adult manner. A toddler who starts to act out and cry more when a new baby is introduced into the family could be seen as regressing. Next up, we have reaction formation. This is just going to be when we think or behave in a way that is the opposite of how we really feel. If you have ever seen the classic TV show Hey Arnold, one of the main characters, Helga, is constantly exhibiting this defense mechanism, as she constantly bullies Arnold, calling him a football head, even though deep down she is madly in love with him. Projection is going to be when someone disguises their own threatening impulses by attributing them to others. A person who tends to lie a lot might always think that others are lying to them, projecting their own poor quality onto other people. Next up, we have rationalization. Rationalization is when we explain away or refuse to face our feelings through the use of socially acceptable explanations that make us feel better about ourselves. The perfect example for rationalization is when we have a bad grade in a class and think it's because the teacher hates us, when in reality we are just not giving the class our full attention and effort. Displacement is when emotional impulses are redirected towards a substitute, less threatening person or object. An example could be someone who has just been scolded by their parents and goes on to start a fight with their younger sibling. They end up displacing the anger they have with their parents to a less threatening target, their younger sibling. Next up, we have sublimation, which is just going to be when people rechannel unacceptable urges or impulses into socially approved behaviors. Let's say you were passed up for a promotion at work and you were much more qualified than the person who got the job. Well, this makes you pretty angry at your boss. But you know you just can't go in and start attacking him or something. Get fired. Probably go to jail too. So instead, you pick up a new hobby and focus all of your attention on that. You are rechanneling the energy of anger you had towards your boss into something more productive and socially acceptable. And last, we have denial. And I am not talking about the river in Egypt. That was a dumb one. I'm keeping it though. Denial is just when we fail to recognize or admit to the existence of anxiety-provoking information or unacceptable impulses or qualities. Someone who has been smoking for several years, saying that they can quit whenever they want, might be experiencing a case of denial. So, there are our 8 defense mechanisms. Up next, you're going to observe a day in the life of our friend Scott Mike. Scott is going to have a pretty tough day today, and chances are he is going to be utilizing some of the defense mechanisms that we just talked about. Now it is going to be your job to identify these defense mechanisms as they occur. I'll give you a hint. Throughout the day, Scott will exhibit a total of 3 defense mechanisms. We ready? Let's go. Here we have Scott Michaels, a regional manager for a paper supplier in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Today was a very important day for Scott. He was making a trip to New York City to apply for a corporate position at his company. Since Scott has worked at the company for the past 10 years, he believed he was a shoo-in for the job. During the interview, he answered every question perfectly, or so he thought. On the way back to Pittsburgh, Scott got a call from his boss telling him that the interview went well, but they are going a different direction with the position.
Completely stunned that he did not get the promotion, Scott chalked it up to the fact that he's just too valuable of an asset at his current position. When returning to the office that day, Scott's friend, Schrute, had a surprise party planned for him, thinking he would get the promotion. When Scott sees this, he calls Schrute a moron and tells him to put all of this stuff away as he storms into his office. Upset that he did not get the promotion, Scott starts to dedicate a majority of his free time to his new hobby of parkour, which is just the activity of moving rapidly through an area, typically an urban environment, negotiating obstacles by running and climbing.
So there is our story of Scott Michael. Wonder where I came up with the idea from. Were you able to identify the 3 defense mechanisms? The first defense mechanism that is present in our scenario is going to be rationalization. This can be seen when Scott is driving home after not being offered the promotion, and saying the reason is because he's too valuable at his current position. Scott is trying to justify a valid reason for why he did not get the promotion, in order to avoid the anxious feeling of failure that come along with not being offered it. The next defense mechanism we are going to see in this scenario is going to be displacement. Scott was upset that he did not get the promotion and took it out on his friend Schrute when returning to the office. And the last defense mechanism present in our scenario is going to be sublimation. We see sublimation occur while Scott decides to direct all of his energy to his new hobby of parkour. Scott is rechanneling all of the energy he was using to get the promotion and spends more time with his hobbies. Now, while a proper short-term solution, utilizing these defense mechanisms are not necessarily the best way to deal with a situation that is causing our body significant anxiety, as emotional difficulties can arise as a result of not coping with underlying issues. Alright? So that does it for our lesson on defense mechanisms. If you enjoyed what you watched, please do feel free to like and subscribe. It is always appreciated and will keep you posted on when I post new videos. Until next time.